Hello and welcome to the New Age Geek Channels. If you're new here, we'll build an inclusive space for people of all walks of life through the power of friendship and tabletop role-playing games. Tonight we have our regular interview show, Investigation Check, where we dive into the geeky lives and passions, hobbies, and interests, and the untold stories behind our favorite content creators. Tonight, I have the amazing Alejandra, part owner of, I want to make sure I get all these right, because there's a lot going on here that you are a part of, and it's amazing. Every single one of them is amazing.
Sorry.
It is co-owner of the Mythos, oh my god, my fucking tongue is not working already. Mythos Media Production, one half of the Table Talk podcast, and I mean, a tremendous amount of other things, a character artist, a bunch of different things. Hello, Alejandra. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let everyone know where they can find you. What are you doing?
So exactly like you said, I'm one half of the hosts of Table Talk, where we are a TTRPG discussion podcast where we do basically cover everything except for playing on the actual podcast. So we talk about everything within the community, about the games. We interview other creators in the space, as well over a slew of different topics. We mostly ramble, and it's a very cozy, fun time, I hope. Just like you said as well, I'm also a character artist. I did all the character art for the Fae Dark Eclipse over on Boss Jellybean's Twitch channel. So if you want, go check out that, and you can watch me play as well with Mariah. And you can find me at Table Talk RPG on Instagram, TikTok for as long as it'll last for us, and probably moving over to Blue Sky and other things. But it's always at Table Talk RPG. You can listen to us wherever podcasts can be listened to every single Wednesday. And then my art is at Reina Creates on both TikTok and Instagram.
Amazing. Okay. Are you ready to dive in tonight then? And
sure.
Let's all learn about you. Not to put you. We're gonna put you on the spot. So.
Do it.
All right.
I do well in the spotlight. Let's go.
Fuck yes. All right. Let's dive in then. I want you to take me back to little Alejandra.
Little baby
Alejandra. What was kind of your first experience in the geek space? Was there a show, a movie, a book? What kind of sparked your interest in geek culture?
So, yeah, I would have to attribute a lot of that in my wee years to my older brothers, who were very nerdy. They were very into anime and video games a lot when they were growing up. They are 10 and 12 years older than me, so there's a big age gap there. So I was consuming some media that I was probably far too young for, and my parents were not knowledgeable enough about what they were consuming to just be like, yeah, sure, she can watch, I'll play. And I've been playing video games since I think my first console was a Dreamcast, though I do not remember it. The first video games I can really hardcore remember were Pokemon on my Game Boy, and then Wind Waker on my GameCube and things like that. And those were kind of the really starting to get into different games and things like that. I watched my brothers play a ton on their PlayStation, and I remember specifically I begged my mom to get me a PlayStation 3 game so that I could play on my brother's console while he's in college. So while he was in classes and stuff, I was like, I just want to play while he's not there. So she bought me a game. It's a super obscure game. It's called Folklore. Okay. I don't know if you know of it.
I don't think so.
It's it's a JRPG for sure, and I picked it out because the cover was pretty, literally. But you switch back and forth between the perspectives as a man and a woman, both coming to this weird little uncanny valley island. Her mom dies mysteriously in the beginning, and so he's investigating her death. She came there to reconnect with her mom.
Okay.
And somehow they wind up in fairies, but really fucked up fairies.
Okay.
And they gain powers. It was really crazy, but I loved it. And so that kind of started me buying just a bunch of PlayStation games. I started to consume a lot of video games and things like that. And aside from that, reading The Hobbit was also my first real introduction into fantasy, and I ate that book up like it was my day job. And it just, I don't know, the fantasy bug bit me, and I just loved all of it. And I've been always a very maladaptive daydreaming person. So I just love living in fantasy stories and consuming them.
What is it about like the fantasy genre then that like really seems to click for you? Is it like an escapism thing, or is it like the hero's journey portion of it? Like what part of that genre specifically ticks that box for you? Because you can get that in a lot of different places.
For sure. It's I think it's a blend of a lot of things. I think the escapism is a big one. But with I don't know what it is about fantasy. I think it's like the magic, the different races and other things and cultures and how they kind of blend together outside of like, we just have humans on this planet. We don't really have it. I mean, now aliens in the ocean confirmed. Are they hot is the only thing I want to know.
That's fair question.
But it's something about like magic will always have a soft spot in my heart. I love sci-fi as well, but like magic for sure is what grips me.
Yeah.
I think escapism is like the biggest part of it. I'm always just like in my own little world, whether it's like I love reading, I love drawing fantasy, I love playing TTRPGs. Like it just has me in a chokehold.
So what? All right. So you've already kind of like talked about a few different fantasy systems. What do you prefer? Like the little more, like the more grim, the high fantasy, the low fantasy. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Oh, I think there's like, okay. Me personally, I think my biggest like what kind of gets me is if there's ever any element of like romance mixed into the fantasy. Love. I'm a hopeless romantic, but I also love like tragedy a little bit. So I'm very much
someone to die.
Truly, if they're both in love and they both die, even better. But it's very much like I don't know. I love like a very kind of tragic love story. One of those that like, the love was there, it didn't change anything, but it matters that the love was there kind of thing. I don't know why that like hyperfixates for me. So any game that I've ever had the ability to like romance characters in, I'm like eating that shit up.
So do you see like that theme kind of translate into when you play on the tabletop? We'll get to how we got into tabletops in a little bit, but I want to know like when you're making a character, what's going into that thought process?
Okay. To go into a game with like a pre-established romance in mind, right, with either NPCs or like other player characters. I like to let that kind of start developing on its own. Because sometimes like I always encounter this where I have an idea of a character. I like fully conceptualize them in my brain. I'm like, this is who they are, this is how they act, this is all the things. I start playing them and they're not that. Like so whatever happens once you sit at the table and they start like, it's like the character reveals themselves to you as you play, and they're not what you thought they were going to be, but you still like it. Like, it's great. I like to kind of see where things go and let it develop on its own organically, because I think that's a lot more meaningful.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there is like an inkling or even a whisper of a possible romance, I'm immediately in that person's DMs. I'm like, so I have an idea. I'm like, let me know how you're feeling about this. I had a DM in one of my home games who happened to like when we were making characters and establishing connections, he picked out me and this other guy and he was like, hey, you two were childhood friends and my character is the daughter of like a tavern owner in Sharn, and so it's also / a brothel. So like when that guy's older brother came to like have a good time, he's like, my little brother came with me, so I'm just gonna stash him with her in the tavern side of the establishment. And he just happened to drop, he's like, y'all maybe like, I don't know, shared a first kiss when y'all were like 10 or something. And I was like immediately hooked in on that tone. Yeah. And I'm like, me and this guy are talking. And so we've played them the whole time as like, there's no romance that has happened yet. It's very much a like, they've been childhood crushes on each other, but neither of them have admitted it.
Yeah.
And both of them will not do so. And so like everybody else knows, but like, they're like, no.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Love it.
So you're just sitting there in the background plotting, how am I going to make this tragic?
Yes. I'm already worried. The more that I love a character, the more they suffer, and it's so bad.
So, all right. So we've already established that you kind of like have been playing these video games, kind of reading these stories. At what point do you finally get to sit down at a table and be introduced to tabletop games as a whole?
Okay. So I think it started in like my first year of community college, and I had a friend. We were friends since high school. Most of my high school friends like ended up staying because we had a community college literally across the street. So we all spent like the first 2 years just migrating over there. And so he came to me one time. He was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons?" I was like, "I've heard of it. Don't really know how you do it." And he's like, "I want to learn to play, like, want to learn to be a dungeon master. So if I came up with a game, like, would you want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, fuck it, whatever." He buys all the books, reads all the things, and he's like, "Cool, I got a campaign going. Like, here's the date, whatever." I do minor research, and I'm like, "Wait, I have to act at a table of other people? What?" And I'm an extrovert, mind you, but I was like kind of nervous about it. So I was like, "Okay, this is fine. Everything's fine." And I show up with 2 bottles of wine. I drank the first bottle before we even started, and so I was like, "All right, let's go!" Like,
I'm ready to fucking act my ass off.
Yeah, fuck it. And I'm glad I did, because I was the only person invested in his story. Unfortunately, like the other 3 guys at this table were like on their phones the whole time.
That sucks.
Only ever really interested when we were in combat, and they were really just like, I cast my strongest spell or do my strongest attack, and then I'm sitting here waiting for my next turn. I was the only one that was like, "Okay, tell me everything I can do in 1 turn, and I'm going to try to do a lot of shit in 1 turn." Or like, we go to a town, and I'm like, "I'm going to talk to everybody and try to, figure out what's going on." I was very invested. And so like, loved that, but didn't love the people I was playing with. So we maybe did like 3 sessions, and I was like, "I don't know that this group necessarily is for me, but if something else comes along, maybe." I don't touch it again for several years after that. And I graduate university, and I went through a period in which, like, we're not going to get into it, but I let go of a specific group of friends after finding out some stuff. And so I was like, suddenly I'm living in Austin with like 0 friends. And this guy that I knew in college randomly messages me, and we started talking again. And he was like, "Hey, like, you mentioned you played Dungeons and Dragons before." And I was like, "A couple of times." And he's like, "I have a game, and we have a whole table. We need a new player, and maybe you can meet some new friends through it." And I was like, "Hey, I'm not gonna turn it down."
Fuck it.
And I go, and that's actually how I met Mariah, who's my co-host.
Okay.
Because she worked with the same guy after he graduated. And so we went and we started playing, and that was the first time I played at a table of people that like to play this game.
Gotcha.
Right? They had fully realized characters, backstories, accents. They were super comfortable being like goofy or dramatic, and I was like, I did not know it could be like this. And so that was when the bug bit me.
Yeah.
I played Nefera, who, funny enough, I now play like a modified version of her on Boss Jellybean's channel. But in her origins, Nefera was a druid who got cursed by some hags to look ancient, like little old grandma old. So they rescue me from a jail cell, and I'm just this little grandma-looking elf woman, and I'm just pinching butt cheeks and being silly. And I'm like slowly regaining my power and like Benjamin Buttoning as I go. Yeah. So I start looking younger the more power I like get back. But they didn't know that, and so I was just like this little old granny that was hanging out. And it was so much fun. And then like COVID happened and all that stuff. So then I ended up moving back to Houston. He ends up moving back to Houston. And we end up starting a new campaign here that was like a Curse of Strahd campaign. So Mariah was driving once a month to come like play. Actually, no, I think she was driving like twice a month to come play. So, and then we met a group of girls, and it was literally an all-female table playing a Curse of Strahd campaign aside from the DM.
Right.
And the campaign itself, so fun.
Yeah.
The dynamics of the group, a little messy, because the dungeon master was maybe possibly flirting and sleeping with many people at the table. And you know,
judgment free zone.
hey, me, not recommended. And so things devolved from there. But funny enough, like at one point, I just decided, like, hey, the campaign is super fun, and we're all sticking it out because of the campaign at this point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can't do this anymore. Once I left, other people were like, if you're not here, I'm not dealing with these people.
Yeah.
So a lot of us left all at the same time, and
how many people?
It was just
how many people were total in playing this game?
So it was him, this other girl, Alyssa, Bex, Mariah, and me. So 6 total, with including the dungeon master. So then, 4 of us left, and
so everyone except for the 2 people that were flirting at a table.
Yeah. And so we all left, and we were kind of sitting around, and we were like, we love playing together. But none of us knew how to be a dungeon master. Mm-hmm. And it was always, admittedly, a little intimidating, because I will give it to him, for all his toxicity, he is a very good dungeon master. Okay. He is a very good storyteller. And, you know, but it was intimidating to take up the mantle with him around. And with it being just us, I was the one that had the most experience. And I also had a bunch of books that I bought just because I have a problem. And so I was like, in theory, I could do it. And I just gave them all the books that I had, and I was like, pick a campaign and we'll run it. And they wanted to do Strixhaven, because we were like, hey, we just did this grimdark, Curse of Strahd, slightly kinky campaign. Maybe we need like a palate cleanser. Yeah. And so I was like, cool. And so I took it up, and I really said with my whole chest, I was like, it's my first time DMing. I'm going to stick to the book. I'm not going to get too complicated. Mm-hmm. Famous, very famous last words. Within like 1 or 2 sessions, that book was thrown out the fucking window. Yeah. And now we're in a fully realized homebrew world of my own making. And like the only Strixhaven thing about it is the fact that we're at Strixhaven school, and I have the colleges and maybe a handful of students and professors from the book. Everything else is on me, baby. So now we've been playing that for the past like over 2 years now.
Oh, okay, same game.
Nice. And now all of my players are starting to take up the mantle for themselves. So Mariah is
awesome.
Our storyteller for VTM. Bex is about to do a quick, like, short campaign that's a, like, 90s teens horror campaign where we're all going to high school together. And then Alyssa is about to start doing her own full campaign. I think it's like a Dragonlance campaign.
Ooh, okay. Nice.
And yeah, so, like, I'm in a very privileged position in that, like, I love everybody that I play with. They're amazing people. We do it once a month. Our sessions run like 10 to 18 hours. And on top of that, all of my players are also DMing, so I get to play as well.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point in this kind of journey are you guys going and starting this production company and like putting content online? For the people that are watching, which of those shows is already live and which ones are going to be live?
So it started probably a year into me being a dungeon master. Mm-hmm. Me and Mariah, honestly, like, we're just sitting down and talking one day, and I don't know what kind of bit us, but we were both like wanting to start a podcast and thinking about what could we start a podcast about. And then we were like, well, duh, like TTRPGs is basically our entire lives. Like, it's hyperfixation doesn't cover it. And we were just like, well, we could talk about this fucking all day. And we also have that specific experience with a pretty toxic table, which is one of our more famous episodes. That we wanted to kind of shed light on, like, the normalization of, like, hey, if you are at a table that you are generally not having fun at, it is okay to leave. Yeah. It is okay. Like, it is not the end of the world. That is not the only time that you can and will play Dungeons and Dragons. And also just making, like, being a dungeon master more accessible, because especially, like, as a woman in, like, a male-dominated space, that can be intimidating. Yeah. And it wasn't until I saw other women doing it that I was like, wait, I could do it this way. And it clicked for me then. And that's when I started. So I'm like, that representation is important. So we started around a year into it. Our Strixhaven game, we've talked about publicizing it before, and I've had people ask for it, but it is a game that is very like near and dear to our hearts, and it's something like, one, it was like our recovery from trauma fully, and two, it's something changes at the table when it's being produced and consumed.
Right.
And so it didn't start out as a game for consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of vulnerability that my characters get to explore at my table. And I go really, really deep into their character backstories and other things. And I don't think it would be as genuine if there were cameras and mics around. So that game specifically, we want to keep to ourselves.
Yeah.
We are fully on board with producing an actual play, and that is something we want to do in the future. I'm a fucking perfectionist, though, and I need all the equipment to make it look pretty and nice. So I'm currently in the process of like slowly amassing the things that I need for it. Mariah's now got a beautiful house that we might use for recording things like that. So it's in the works, it's in the future, but it is something that we would love to show because I think our dynamic at the table is actually very fucking entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the biggest thing as far as...
We do have all the sessions recorded though, so I think I would love to, once the campaign's over, we've talked about releasing those recordings. Once I edit them down and clean them up and all that good stuff, but there's a lot going. Each session is so long.
Yeah.
to go through all that audio is a task on its own.
Is the plan because you said you're kind of amassing equipment and you have the space now, is it to do it live all in person and then record that and put that online, or are you going to do it over the internet recording?
I think honestly, like, we may do certain like live events and things like that, but I think what I would rather do with it is just record it, edit it, produce it. Again, because hyper perfectionist, I would love it to be done the right way that I want it to be presented to people. And I think like with anything, there's so much like random in the middle filler stuff. And I think also in general, because like I'm sure you know, once you're in the creator space, there's other things that you have to be like really wary and careful of. So things said in the moment sometimes might not be what someone actually means, and it may reflect badly on them online and get taken fully out of proportion. So I'd rather have a little more control over how that story is presented and the integrity of it.
But are you guys playing in person or playing?
We play in person.
That's fun. That's...
Yeah, in person dynamics at a table are my favorite whenever possible.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the body language.
Yes, nothing compares.
Yeah, I'm sitting behind this DM screen having like a full telenovela play out in front of my face because these girls get in it and they'll get in each other's faces, and then like you think that they just had the worst argument of their lives and then immediately sit down and gush over how good that scene was.
Oh, that's
great. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So let's kind of talk about table talk right now, because that's how I met you guys, was through PAX, meeting you guys as Table Talk. You and Mariah, amazing human beings. I want to tell everyone, give us number one, the elevator pitch for Table Talk, and then I want to talk about what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Table Talk, it's very much a very casual conversation around everything TTRPG, from actually playing the game, the community itself, other content creators, the media around it, and things that are going on currently, and mechanics and rules and lore and etc. Like we cover it all and just kind of nitpick at it. We ramble a ton. So if it's been described as like the vibe of you listening to your friends chat after a game kind of thing, like when all the post-session dissection is happening. And yeah, it's basically just you hanging out with us while we ramble about random TTRPG related things, and sometimes we have really cool guests on, and so you can see other cool people in the space and what they're up to and what they think and what their experiences are, and that's basically it.
So what is that process like for you when you are coming up with an episode idea? Because I know you guys have different topics every episode. Is there like, is it a conversation you have with your guest pre-hand? Like, what do we want to talk about? Or is it just you have a list of things and you try and fill a guest into those spots?
Yeah, so when we have a guest, I send out a calendar invite. Normally, we've had a little bit of a conversation beforehand. So sometimes we've already discussed the kinds of things that they want to come on and like talk about, ideally, or within the calendar invite, there is a prompt to, hey, let us know if there's something very specific you want to cover on the episode, and we will do our best to kind of cater around that. So most of the time, it's very rare when someone doesn't already have a topic in mind. But in the event that they don't, me and Mariah and our audio editor, Kay, will come up with just a list of topic ideas that we have. My friend Bex is also contributing to a lot of ideas at the moment. We just had her on as a guest, and she's like, hey, I have a whole folder of things y'all can talk about. And we're like, bless you.
Yeah.
So we just come up with a bunch of random things, and me and Mariah will look at each other and be like, yeah, we can ramble about that for an hour. But yeah, normally with a guest, it is up to them, whatever they want to talk about, especially if they have like a really cool project they want to promote, we work it in there. But it's also very, very casual as well. And we like to emphasize that with our guests. So it's like, my typical intro to them is like, hey, cursing's okay. We are checked off explicit for a reason because I'm a sailor, so is Mariah, and we will not be controlled. But if you don't want to curse, you don't have to. And if you are feeling like you're rambling, follow and chase your truth, because that is the entire brand. And trust and believe, I'll reel us back in at some point. But I'm probably rambling right there with you. So it's very casual.
So we kind of talked about this beforehand, and we're not going to talk about names or anything like that. When you are interviewing though, and you're dealing with like a guest that is maybe not used to the format or doesn't understand what kind of tools, interviewer to interviewer, are you using to kind of try and negotiate that conversation back into a direction that works for you and for your show?
For sure. I wish I could say that I am like prepared for instances like that, and that I have a list of things that I can ask, but I really wing it. Yeah. Like, to be honest, if I'm a very good people person. I love having conversations with people, but yeah, I always have that going on in the back of my mind of like, how is this presenting on the episode? Can it be redirected? And if I can start seeing that the conversation is maybe dying a little too early, or it's veering in a direction we don't really like necessarily want and want to bring it back to the topic, I think on the fly, I'm thinking up questions in regards to what they just said. Mm-hmm. Very much it's, I guess the sneaky little tool, and this is something I learned at business school, is just like repeat the last thing that they said to you and confirm it, and then redirect that into your next like follow-up question. Gotcha. So it's an active listening tool, so it shows that like, hey, I'm genuinely listening to you, and it's a way to kind of like feng shui it back towards the things that you want to be sticking to as a topic, or making sure that the conversation isn't necessarily like dying out too early.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And what would you describe as like some of the interactions you really enjoy having when you are interviewing some of these people? Like why do you like interviewing? I think is what I'm trying to ask there.
I love interviewing because like Mariah and I have had this experience where like she and I have a lot of great chemistry together, which is one of my major things. Is like I've always wanted to create and be on the internet and do things, but I don't consider myself entertaining on my own. I need like energy to feed off of. I couldn't sit in front of a camera without someone else and just talk at myself for hours. I really couldn't say I could do that. But if I have literally one other person, I can back and forth banter all day. And I think mine and Mariah's dynamic is what most people find entertaining. With interviewers, you're adding like another element to that, or interviews. You're adding another person into the mix, and so I feel like there's a lot more to harp on there once there's like a third or a fourth person joining. And it's a fresh new perspective. You can kind of pick their brains a little bit, and it can really take you down interesting conversations.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing is when you land those people that like you immediately connect with, and the episode that is an hour feels like it went by in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, some of my favorites, like Slovenly Trolls, I think we had a 2-part episode because we ended up talking to them for 2 hours without even noticing. Like, the dynamic was incredible.
Yeah.
Ardarius, also another one that was really, really good. Because again, immediately right off the bat, there was just so much connection and really good quality conversation happening. So and I think it's also, we're very fortunate in the community that we're in, because it's such a great equalizing hobby that you're like, at bare minimum, I know that you're a little freak about this specifically. And if I can just target that, I know some good nuggets are going to come out.
Okay. I felt really called out there. I felt really called out that one. Like you pointed, I was like, oh.
I'm like, I know you're a fucking freak. I know you love them click clacks, and I know you think about big buff orc women.
Controversial point. I only have 1 set of dice. I'm a dice
That's
purist.
criminal.
I'm a dice
That's
purist.
criminal activity. Okay, Lou Wilson.
1 set of dice, and I get rid of dice. If someone gives me dice, I will give them away to someone else. I will re-gift them. I have 1 set of dice.
I need you to know that I have a bag of dice that I could kill someone with.
I believe you. And
Like,
that is
it is
why
huge.
I will only ever have 1 set of dice.
Can't relate. Can't relate. Again, my point stands though, you're a little freak.
That's fair. I accept this. I feel like the people that know me too are like, yeah, that tracks.
Right. No, yeah, true. Facts.
Okay. So what kind of is your let me back up 2 seconds actually. Where does Mythos production come in during this journey of yours? Like did you start Table Talk first, or did you start the company first?
The company first, because Mariah and I are both business bitches.
Got it. Love that.
So when we were conceptualizing this whole thing, we were like, I'll be damned if it's not done correctly. And so the conversation started with like, okay, we've got the concept for the podcast itself, but we knew if the eventual goal is to monetize and produce other content and things like that, we needed an LLC. We needed to be able to keep those finances like separate from our own, and do everything right from the jump, because if not, it's kind of a pain in the ass later when you're trying to divide everything up. So we looked into getting an LLC and everything, and Mythos Media Productions is kind of like the overarching umbrella that we want other content to be under. So like Table Talk is one of our like podcasts that is like our baby now, but we eventually want to produce other shows.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ideas that we have currently working is like a like story format horror podcast.
Okay.
Like very kind of Magnus Archive-y situation. And Mariah's currently working on writing that, and we are working with Kate the Great on like casting and other things. And it's going to be more like audio drama situation. Okay. So we're going to take more of like a production directing role there.
Right.
And we just want to kind of dip into different types of projects that all kind of still have something to do with each other. And Mythos Media just kind of is the overarching like umbrella that they'll all go under.
So New Age Geeks, obviously we're an LLC as well. That was part of the process. I want to talk to you about for the people that are looking to get into AP production or any sort of production in this space, can you explain to them why LLC is important? Or LLC or S Corps, depending on how big your company is, etc.
So it's important because especially like in actual play productions or anything. I mean, we're just an audio-based podcast, and we still had a lot of upfront investment when it comes to equipment, software, a myriad of other things when we went to the conference and all these things. It's that sneaky little like the tricks that rich people use to do what they do. And we spent collectively probably like a couple grand between me and Mariah to start the podcast. Probably closer to 3 or 4, to be honest. And that all got written off on our taxes. So, and you know, I'm a girly that like I have some debt, and I had some debt like written off and like consolidated.
Yeah.
But what people don't know is that got counted as income for me that year that needed to be taxed.
Sick.
So because I started this LLC the same year, I didn't have to do that and pay thousands of dollars back on debt that I had consolidated.
Yeah.
So that saved my literal ass, first of all. But it's a way for you to be able to write off all the things that you would already expense to start this business. And I also think that...
Oh, I just want to time out 2 seconds.
Yeah.
All of this advice, we are not tax professionals. We are laymen's working in this space to just kind of navigate it. If you are deciding to do something like this is just our experience with this, and you should seek a tax professional.
Consult a tax professional, because that is exactly what I did.
Yes.
Sorry, I was like, no, thank you. Yeah. No, please go talk to your tax person, because I just handed them all my things and kept track of everything. I was like, please do magic, because I've never done this. Yes. And they were like, oh, honey. But it was great. And so it's also something that I think, if you are wanting to be serious about it, having an LLC is a way to kind of ingrain it in your brain that you're like, hey, my name's tied to this. It's serious. I've invested into this. And I want to make this work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Look up, obviously, the rules and laws for what would be the best for you in your specific state. We went with LLC in Texas, which we're fortunate that we're in a state that is very good for starting your own business. But there's different things to do. Mariah did like a full brunt of work researching a lot of that. And we're also fortunate that we have our backgrounds in business.
Yeah.
So do your research for sure. But it is definitely worth investing the money into it if you are going to want to be serious about it in the long run, because it will save you so much headache later.
Yeah, definitely. So how has that experience been for you doing this? Like, I know that's a lot, and you're coming to the space, you formed the LLC, you're like trying to grow this channel now. Where are you at? Where are you guys at with it? How are you guys doing?
Yeah.
What is the future plans for Mythos Productions?
So when we started, it just got, I think we had some really fortunate timing, because we started literally like a week or two right when the fall of Twitter was happening and everybody was migrating over to Threads.
Yeah.
And so when I was making the socials, Threads was literally like just now starting as a thing. So I made us a Threads profile. And honestly, a lot of our growth, I think, can attribute to a lot of that upward momentum of Threads, where we were like one of the first people on there in the TTRPG space. So we got noticed really early by a lot of people. And our profile there grew, and our other profiles grew pretty much 1-to-1 the entire time. So I think within like a couple months, we got to like 1K like followers, and then we ended up we heard about PAX happening, and at the time, Mariah and I both were like, do you want to go? I guess we're going. And we truly did decide to go to PAX just on a pure whim. And with zero expectations. She had never been to a convention before. I have, but it was very much like, I was like, we're just going to go, vibe, have a great time.
Yeah.
We met so many people, like huge people in the industry, that we were just like gagged by. Yeah. And of course, everybody's extremely nice and so wonderful. And everyone's literally just people out here. But like, we ended up running into like Luis Carrazzo, and he had been interacting with us on Threads, so I just kind of approached him and I was like, hi, like, we're table talk, I'm so sorry, I just wanted to say hi. And then ended up hanging out with him and partying with him like the whole night, and then he eventually came on as a guest, which was wonderful. And met Kate the Great, met you, like, met so many people, Johnny. And And yeah, like just got to mingle with a lot of people in the industry. We were astounded at the amount of people that recognized us, because to us, we're like, we've been doing this for like a few months.
Right.
Like we're nobody right
Yeah.
now. But like we even had people approach us about like specific episodes, like the Toxic Tables one,
Nice.
and telling us like how much that shifted things for them, and we kind of felt the impact there, and we're like, okay, like this is something, and it's worth doing. And then after that, we pretty much just kept doing our thing, and it's like slow and steady growth. I unfortunately have been like struggling a little bit with jobs this year, so it's been kind of on and off hectic. So our social media presence is not where I would like it to be. But right now, currently, both Mariah, we also brought on our audio editor this past year, which has been amazing, and Kay is a wonderful, wonderful being who is also like killing it in her own career, and she travels all over the place for theater production and does all these really cool shows. So we're like extremely fortunate to have her. But we're kind of having like a table talk convening at the end of the year, where we want to really set a lot of intention for this coming year, because we have projects that we want to do. We want to get our name like further out there, and be better about our online presence and grow. But that's kind of where we're at.
So what kind of like challenges have you faced throughout this last probably about 2 years you guys have been doing the thing, right? If my numbers are right. Over these last 2 years, what are some of the challenges you guys have faced to kind of break into this space and grow? And I know you said you've had a lot of positive timing and opportunity with stuff. What are some of the challenges that you faced with that?
Consistency is huge.
Yeah.
Consistency is huge for everybody across the space, I think. We struggle with it. Many people do. We've been very good about staying active within our community and like guesting on other shows. But like, yeah, being consistent with our online presence. And I think with us as a team, and I'm sure you have experience with this too, is like, it's hard to delegate jobs, especially when we're like very controlling people. Okay. So I am very much I put too much on myself, because I'm like, I know I'll get it done, and I'll get it done right and whatever, but then I overload myself, and then nothing gets done, and I'm like, shit. Yeah. I forgot to delegate. And like Mariah, same thing. And I think for us, the biggest takeaway this past year has been staying consistent, actually like delegating the workload so it's not too much on any one person. And just being accountable to each other and communicating and things like that. So like if, like for me, I worry a lot. So if there's a project on the horizon and I know this is Mariah's job, but like I'm not getting any updates on where it's at, then I'm like, I start to worry. And so we've had conversations, like I love her so much, and I really truly could not do this with anybody else, because she and I are very capable of like sitting down, having hard conversations with each other. And like, if you're gonna go into this thing with other people, you have to have someone that's good at like, one, being honest with themselves, one, being accountable to themselves, and like being able to communicate back and forth in those kind of harder situations. And she and I have been able to like surpass a lot of hurdles in this together, which gives me all the confidence in the world that this can and will be something that's very successful. We just have to like actually come together and be accountable to ourselves.
Let me ask you this. So we all know Critical Role. We all know that they've had plenty of discussions like, don't go into business with your friends. We're a unique situation. Don't listen to us. Don't go into business with your friends. You're in business with your friends. When New Age Geeks started, we were a year without being a company officially, and then eventually became friends, and then formed the company together. So we're a company of friends. How do you see a universe where people in this space aren't friends that form companies? Because I don't see how you could be in this space and not be friends.
Yeah, it's a very unique industry in that like the very thing we are producing works when there's chemistry at the table. So inherently, for you to have a successful like dynamic and game, the people that you are basically in business with have to be really good friends with you. And otherwise, like, I mean, I guess if you're at the level where you can cast people and it's like a professional relationship, sure. But realistically, that's not the case for many of the people that are smaller in this space. And oftentimes you become friends with everybody that's in the community. As you grow and start introducing yourself and whatever, it revolves around connection. It's what the whole game is about. It's what the community itself is about. It's what our potential future jobs are basically about. I don't see a world where you can go about this as a profession without holding friendships or friendly dynamics with the people that you are in business with. You just have to be very conscious and aware and honest about who is good as my dear friend that can guest star every once in a while, and then who is a friend that I know I can have some hard conversations with, and we can compartmentalize and be like, hey, this is about the business, this is about our brand, let's talk about this, and we know that that's separate from my feelings for you as a friend.
I want to ask you this then. What are some good safety tools? Maybe that's not the right word, because I feel like that is too labelish of what I'm trying to ask, but what are some ways that you can navigate or at least set some sort of pre-expectations? Be like, hey, we're gonna have a business conversation, let's talk business, and then we can go back to being friends. Like, how do you kind of try and negotiate that? So
it's funny because, like, you say safety tools is too labelish, but that's basically what we did.
Right.
Because, like, the first time that we were, like, encountering some frustrations between each other, it was, and, like, I'm an over-communicator in my personal relationships, family, friends, otherwise, etc. So I could see the signs of like early frustration starting to build between me and her in regards to the business. And so I was like, okay, I sat her down and I was like, we need to figure out a way for us to like sit down and have these conversations without it kind of building up, because if it builds up, it becomes nasty and then we can't continue doing this. And like, our friendship comes over everything. If it gets to a point where we can't do this in a healthy way, it's not worth doing, because the dynamic is going to reflect within the podcast, and then nobody's going to find it entertaining. Everyone's here because she and I like each other. So it was very much a safety tool situation where we decided, like, hey, when we have to have these real conversations, we basically, like, set the tone of like, hey, it's not necessarily that we have to do it right then and there, but like, there's something about in regards to the business that I wanted to talk to you about. Like, are you in a good headspace right now to have that conversation, or should we like schedule it later in the week, or like when's good for you to have a sit down chat about this specific thing? And like, we just kind of make sure that we're both in a mental headspace to handle that conversation. And once we figure it out, we might like send each other like a couple of bullet points of like, hey, these are things that I want to cover when we do have this conversation. Treat it like a meeting where it's like, hey, this is everything we're going to hit. You send me your list of things, so we make sure we talk about everything. And then we sit down, have a very mature conversation where we both understand, like, this is about the business. This is about how we're going to move forward or whatever, or figuring out the middle point for either of us. But I think setting the tone, making sure your business partner is also on the same page, and more importantly, we have lives outside of this. We're not getting paid to do this right now. So it's very much making sure that they're also at a place in their life where they can be like, okay, cool, all my personal affairs are settled and I'm not worried about anything else, and I can devote my attention to this right now.
I think that's great advice. I'm glad you said those things, because I think it is important to like have a set space where you guys can be like, we need to do business stuff. We're going to lock in. We're going to be business people. And then when we're done with that, we can go and we can go back to being friends. We can
go watch a funky little anime together.
Love that. Okay, we're getting ready to wrap up here. So I only have a few more questions for you. How do you incorporate feedback from your audience? Do you guys deal with a lot of feedback as far as that's concerned? Because you guys are an audio only podcast and it's very much interview style. Is there a lot of feedback that comes with that sort of format?
We've had we have quite a few reviews honestly on Spotify, and I've read through all of them. A lot of them are very, very positive.
Fantastic.
A lot of feedback that we got is especially early on, was our audio quality, because we had USB mics to begin with, very cheap ones that the first thing we could buy really.
Right.
Which highly recommend. Don't let the cost of equipment bar you. Just start, because everybody starts somewhere. And I promise you, 60 plus episodes in now, we don't even think about those beginning episodes. I know they exist. I know the audio quality is ass, and I'm so sorry if you're a first time listener, but I promise it gets better, and pretty quickly. But yeah, we do incorporate a little bit of feedback from our comments. We haven't gotten too much. My major thing is with interview situations, when I have guests on, I think it kind of just developed on its own naturally, but having the preemptive, setting the tone, establishing what the interview itself is going to feel like, so that they're comfortable. And then at the very end, I always like to give them a quick little how do you feel?
Right.
How did you feel it went? Is there anything that we can improve on, and things like that? And so far we've had really, really positive experiences. I think I'm my biggest critic when it comes to things, and that's caused me to develop and hone in on things that work and what doesn't work. But yeah, I love feedback. I will take it all day.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give then to people looking to come into this space, whether it be through APs or podcasting or interview shows? What kind of advice would you give for them then?
I think the biggest advice I would give is figure out what it is that you fill within the space that isn't already being done. Figure out how you're kind of unique. For us, it was very much hey, there's 1,000,001 people doing actual plays, but I don't have a lot of content when it comes to just people talking about the game, the community, the things. So we were that feels like a space that we could fill. And we're also 2 women in the space. I'm bisexual and Latin, and so other things. Figure out what you kind of appeal to, figure out what your goal is, and how to kind of differentiate yourself a little bit. And aside from that, look at the content that you consume and think about why you like it, and see if you can't pick some of that stuff out and see how you can implement it for yourself.
Yeah.
So that you can better appeal to people.
Okay.
Don't steal nobody's content, but
don't ever
figure out why you like
content.
it in the first place.
Yes. So is there any projects or collaborations or people that you really have connected with that you or haven't connected with that you want to work with in the future, whether you have them as a guest or you work with them in some other fashion?
Ooh. So we connected a lot with Slovenly Trolls, and we've toyed around with the idea of them having us on as guests.
Okay.
They have a very I love them because I learned so much through their podcast, but they fully academically break down the OG D&D lore. And they're both academics, so they really get into the sources and dissecting every little detail and what it stems from. In also very funny commentary fashion. So I am not that at all. But we've had the idea of them breaking down some lore, and then me and Mariah being guests reacting to the stuff that goes on, because OG D&D lore is so fucking nuts. And so that's one that we're really excited about. Finishing Feydark is a big one, because it's such a huge project that Janelle put together, because it's 2 campaigns that are working in tandem simultaneously that will eventually converge. One is in the Shadowfell and one is in the Feywilds, and it's an all female non-binary cast.
Okay.
That's fun. And it's incredible. I love it so much. And then guests that I would love to work with again. I would love to have Luis Carrazzo back on. and connect with a few other like bigger connections that I had at PAX. Like we talked to a lot of like the Critical Role like production team. So I would love to like sit down and chat with them about like a lot of their projects that they've had going on.
Yeah.
I think it just would be really, really interesting.
Yeah, like what it's like to work at a scale that big. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, my big like star in the sky is like to have a Bria on, just so I could like gush over her, because she's the entire reason I'm here. She's the entire reason I DM. Like I saw the way that she does it, and I was like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And like she's a huge inspiration for me, and like I love that she's a monster fucker, so am I. And I'm like, please just come on the podcast so I can be a little raging a little raging rat next to you.
Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that.
Judgment free zone.
I said in the beginning, are the aliens in the ocean hot? And I meant it with my entire chest.
I'm with you. Listen, I was a Marine. I mean, I'm not going to say I wouldn't.
Hey. Survival instincts? I don't have them.
Anyway. So, you've done a lot now. You've kind of like come up into this space very organically, like put yourself out there and done a tremendous amount of work and like been very successful in this. What has been like you felt as a turning point or pivotal moment in this career that you really kind of felt like, I'm firing all cylinders. This is something I love, I want to do, and kind of like really locked you in on that space?
I think going to PAX really locked it in for me, because it was one thing for it to be this thing that she and I are producing, and like we were getting a lot of hype from watching our channel grow, and like she and I are both stats people, so I was constantly like posting updates like every single week or month of like how we're growing and the interactions that we're having. And I love reading people's comments and stuff and how they feel about the episodes and things like that. But like going to PAX and meeting so many other people in the community that are like doing the exact same thing that we're doing, being recognized by bigger people, it just kind of puts into perspective of how much like, although there is so much like the community itself is big, it's also at the same time very tight knit and close. Yeah. So it's crazy when you go to those spaces and people that you idealize know exactly who you are and can like consume your content too, and everyone's just a little guy trying to make the best of it. And so I think that put a lot of perspective in it, but I just loved interacting with other people, and I love that we grow in this community by working with each other and like promoting each other. And I think it makes it a very unique space because again, like the dynamic at the table is what sells it. And so you genuinely need to get along with people and like each other and tell good stories. So we are incentivized to collaborate and co-create as much as possible. And I think that's a very unique space online where like most people are in competition with each other over the content that they make. We're the opposite and are in fact incentivized to band together and create and promote and all of those things. And it's universal whether you are a small creator or you are a big time creator. Like it goes across the board. And I think I've seen more in this community of larger creators seeing smaller ones and being so willing and open to work because they fully remember being in that spot. Like for us to land Luis Carrazzo, I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And like he's the nicest human in the world. Like we had a lovely conversation. But yeah, I see that very universally, like across the board in the space.
I want to ask you something, and you don't have to answer because I'm going to ask you a little bit about your insecurities.
I'm gonna answer anyway. Okay. I've already gushed about my insecurities before.
What kind of, when you're going out into these spaces or going to be appearing on a channel or doing something like that, what is your, because I know what my fears are. What are your fears as far as like how you're going to present yourself? What parts of your personality do you feel like, God, I hate this about myself. I feel like this is what I do that annoys people. What is that for you? I can answer first if you want, but.
Oh, no, that's a good one. I think the one that like I have the most hesitation with, but it's one that I really, really want to overcome because I think it's important is I want to get more involved with like other Latin creators in the space, and I want to be involved in projects that are predominantly like Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
And I've been invited to a few where it would be like a Spanish speaking, you know, one shot or something, and that is so nerve-wracking for me because like I moved here when I was 7 years old. I lost my Spanish when I was young, and then I had to relearn it. Yeah. So amongst my own family, I faced a lot of criticism because I sound like a gringa, and to other Latinos, I sound Venezuelan, and that's very validating for me. But there are times when I'm conversational, I can understand it fully, but there are times where I get tripped up on words, and that can be very self-conscious. So the idea of doing that live in front of an audience of other people with other Latinos that like you can have the imposter syndrome of like, I was raised here. I didn't get to be raised in my country. And to interact with other Latinos that did, it feels a little bit like I'm not valid even though I know I am. And that can cause a lot of insecurity for me, but I want to so bad to overcome it because I think it's important to have that kind of representation. I know I'm not the only person out here experiencing that. Yeah. And I want more than anything to get over that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know if I can watch it, but that would be cool.
I've done like some all Latin casts where we like throw a little bit of Spanish slang here and there. But I want that's like my big challenge for me is I want to do a couple of one shots where we only speak Spanish.
That'd be really cool. I like that a lot. Okay. Well then, Alejandra.
What is yours? You can't have me do it.
I am super fucking loud. Like it's just the joke. I have a lot of trouble not making jokes in uncomfortable situations. So I worry that I annoy people because I mean you've met me, loud as fuck. I'm the loudest person in a con. I am the loudest person at the con. Yeah. And that in a place where a lot of people have sound sensitivities, and it's like I can be overwhelming, and it is 100% a mess because I am an extroverted introvert. Like I can put on that mask and be down for like 72 hours. You got me. Yeah, you got me a good 72 hours. I can wear this mask. By the end of it, I am like it's like a dopamine dump. I'm depressed. Like I have to like go into my own space. So it's really bad for me because it's hard to do that. But I mean, I'm a straight heavyset white guy with a beard in a space full of heavyset white guys with beards. So it's like I feel like I have to wear this mask to stand out, but I also worry that standing out is annoying to people, or people are going to find it uncomfortable with the jokes. Because I mean, me and Laura Bailey have a very similar sense of humor.
Yeah, but it does hit different coming from a man. Different
coming from me as it does coming from her.
Oh, so, correct.
It's just that is my insecurities. Like I don't ever want to be upsetting someone because I'm trying to just cope with being in the space.
Correct. Yeah. So, I feel that.
Yeah, it's tough. I just don't know how to fix it.
Wish I had advice for you.
I don't know how to not be crazy.
I'm just a little freak.
So am I. All right. Let us then move on to our last question. This is an amazing interview. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
We are going to then open it up to viewer questions. So if you have viewer questions, I know we've already got one from Justin, and we will get to that in a little bit. But if you have questions for Alejandra, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll get to those in a little bit. That being said, I have to ask, what message or impact do you hope to leave on the geek space through your content?
Oh man. I think I want more than anything to make the hobby as accessible as possible, and feel achievable as well, because we've we've personally been on the side of things where we love the hobby and we love participating in the hobby, but like certain things like becoming the dungeon master felt just nerve-wracking, especially as a woman in the space. And I'm sure plenty of other people feel that because, you know, it's changed a lot now, but it was and still somewhat is like a male-dominated hobby. And I know for me, there was some level of insecurity with like, I don't know how to make sound effects. I don't know how to do accents. I don't know, like it because of the fact that I felt like I didn't have these skill sets, I felt like could not do it. And that could not be further from the truth. And I want other people to be encouraged to try and get out of their comfort zone and do it, because if I had not done that, I would not have the amazing, beautiful game that I have now. And now being a dungeon master is my favorite thing to do. And if I hadn't stepped out of that comfort zone, I wouldn't have that. And so I want that to be accessible to people. I want to normalize having healthy table dynamics more than anything else. And that, because that is exactly, it's literally the whole reason we started Table Talk, was because that was the major message we wanted to get out from our previous experience. That like, if there is even an inkling of you that is dreading getting to that table, take that as a sign to go find other people to play with, because I guarantee you there are some wrong ways to play this game, but you can find a specific play style that is meant for you. You can find dungeon masters that play the way that you want to play, and you just have to find your community and find the people that you enjoy doing this hobby with, and then that will transform so much for you.
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely a table for everyone to play the play style they want to play.
Correct.
It's just a matter of finding it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Alejandra, this has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As I've said, we can open it up to viewer questions now. If you have a question for Alejandra, go ahead and put that in the chat. While we are waiting for those questions to come in, we're going to switch over to our Dicey Questions segment. This is where we have 20 random questions determined by a die roll, and we're going to just dig into these. So go ahead and give me a D20 roll.
Okay, but first I have to show off my dice. Yeah. So she's like a hollow metal dice. I don't know if she's gonna. Can I do the influencer thing? No?
No.
Okay, no. She's metal. She's hollow. We can do a little clinky sound
Jingle,
test.
jingle. Little jingle.
Okay. 2.
Okay. What is your favorite franchise, and what is the most overrated franchise in your opinion?
Like with video games, anything? Oh
any way you want to take that.
Okay. My all-time favorite franchise is Dragon Age. Everyone that knows me knows that that is etched into my fucking bone marrow. Like, I have been playing Origins since I was like 12 years old, and I probably played it. I have played, to give you the perspective, every single character combination that you can create in that all the way through. For a solid like 2 months, I was finishing the game within 2.5 days and just starting it back. I love this fucking game. And I love the story. It was the first time I was introduced to like having choices that affect like the future outcome of things, and I just became obsessed with that, like, freedom of choice and seeing the consequences of my actions, which is like a direct highway to my TTRPG obsession later on. But I love Dragon Age. And I will stand for no Dragon Age blasphemy. I will pull out a Glock or something. I don't know.
No guns.
But overrated. Overrated franchise. Can we talk about how like Mission Impossible just needs to cease and desist?
Why?
Like, I know that man, I know Scientology's funding that man's entire career. I get that, but but like, when does it stop? I am not beyond the conclusion that they're gonna put him. They're just gonna start making AI ones once that man passes away. I love that I got your camera to go off.
Yeah, what the hell did you do?
But yeah, no. I need those movies to cease and desist more than anything.
That's ridiculous. I've never once seen a Mission Impossible, so I don't have a good opinion on this.
Seen one, but I know that they've been happening my entire life. Like, I know that it needs to stop.
I had to go to the backup camera. I don't know what you did.
I broke you.
Yeah, you talked about Scientology, and they're like,
They're like, hey, we can't be having that. They got ears everywhere.
all right. Give me another D20 roll.
Alrighty. 11.
11. What is the coolest homebrew thing you've seen or used?
Period.
If you can't think of anything, there is another question, another alternative.
No. My entire campaign is homebrew. So, okay. So, I think the coolest thing I've used so far that I am allowed to talk about that won't be spoilers for future stuff, is that so Mariah's character is the one whose arc we did first, and it is a little fucked up. She's like reborn. Her parents and her got kidnapped and like tortured, and then she was the subject of like testing, and so she's like the first successful reborn.
Okay.
Out of that like little situation, but her parents hella dead. So she super dead. So her whole thing is trying to figure out like what happened to her parents, what the deal was, and we had like, because it's Strixhaven, we concentrated around Witherbloom campus, which is death and growth and decay.
Okay.
And I did a little hoodwink where like the growth professor that looked really, really nice was the actual villain, and planted memories of like the decay professor from her escape to make it seem like he was behind things. So eventually things clicked together. And she had encountered a corpse flower very early on in her nighttime adventures at Witherbloom. And when she finally got to the point where they snuck into the lab, she found her parents, who were fully like homunculus together into an abomination with a corpse flower. And it was like, it had a whole reveal, like as they were trying to free one of their professors from this like very bad lab. And it just broke her mentally. I have some nasty little art for it. And no, yeah, I Full Metal Alchemist her. Hard.
That's literally what I thought of, the first thing you said.
Hard,
That's
yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, she looked at me and was like, break it, it's fine. And I was like, remember that you said that.
Yeah, where is this art?
Remember that you said that.
Where is this art of this homunculus?
Oh my god, it's in my Discord server. I could probably find it for you.
Okay, you gotta send it to me after end of stream because I want to see this.
Okay. I will send it to you.
Okay, give me
It's very fucked up.
I love it. I fucking love that so much. Give me another D20 roll.
That's another 11. We're gonna re-roll.
I got another
17.
I was gonna say I got another.
Oh, there's another one for 11. We can honor the dice.
Okay, what kind of bender would you be in the Avatar world?
Bender?
Yeah.
I, like any normal sane person, have thought about this question a lot.
Oh,
and I feel like there's always two solemn truths for every person. There is what you want to be, and there's what you actually are. What I want to be is a firebender.
Okay.
What I actually am is a waterbender.
Why waterbender?
So, I want to be, I want to be a firebender because I think and everybody has their who they portray themselves as publicly, and then who you are internally. And I think the internal one is the more true answer.
Right.
So kind of the same thing as horoscopes, where your sun is your public face, your moon is internal. That's what I feel like.
Okay, I'll believe you on that.
So I feel like I present as a firebender. And then, but what my actual energy is I feel like it's water because I am very go with the flow and fluid, and also I drive a lot of energy towards healing other people as well as myself.
Okay.
And I think that's a lot more true to character for me than who I present as visually to others.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. All right. And you said 17 was the other role you got?
The other one, yeah.
All right. So what is your default character on Mario Kart or Smash Bros?
Oh my god, both games that I don't play that often. Smash Bros, Ganondorf, because he's daddy. And Mario Kart.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
I think on Mario Kart I play Yoshi a lot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that is where we're going to call the Dicey Question segment. We only have one question so far. Obviously, if you have more questions, you can put those in the chat while I talk. We finish up our conversation. I will make sure we get to all of those questions tonight. This question is from Forever GM Justin, my favorite person in the whole world.
My sweet boy.
Bestest being. I love him so much. What things can we look forward to in 2025 in Table Talk?
In at Table Talk for 2025, I think you can look forward to tons of more guests, because I'm going to be really driving it forward. I have a lot of people already lined up. We've taken a little bit of hiatus for the holidays because it's hectic.
Yeah.
But I've got some exciting guests already lined up and I'm very excited about. You can also look forward to, honestly, we're both getting a lot more involved in other like one-shots. Our Fate Dark Eclipse is going to probably wrap up with recording early of 2025, so we'll be on the lookout for another campaign to join, possibly. And you'll probably start seeing some teasers for that horror drama
Nice.
show as we kind of get rolling on it.
Okay.
Oh, there's another question.
Yeah, this is from Zeal Daddy. Zeal Zaddy, I apologize.
Zeal Zaddy,
how
okay.
Dare I?
Yeah.
What topic do you want to discuss but are nervous about doing so?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think there's a topic that, like, for Mariah and I both is big, and we've, like, kind of beat around the bush a little bit, but it is a conversation that I feel like is important, is, like, really kind of dissecting and explaining in more depth, like, what kind of occurred in that one table that was pretty toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we very much glossed over it, and like, I never want to say any names. Those people are in our past. It's all good. Like, wish them the best. But there are a lot of things that went down at that table that I think would be good for, like, as a learning experience, and also to, like, the way that episode in particular has helped people already, but we haven't been able to really kind of go in depth with it. But like, some of the behavior that happened at the table was pretty problematic and like vulnerable, but I think it's an important conversation to have, especially for women in the space who have like male DMs that may take advantage of a lot of things. Is an important conversation to have, but a really vulnerable one. So it's one that we want to have at some point, but it's a matter of like how we do that in a way that is safe for us and safe for other people.
Yeah, 100%. What would that conversation look like then? Would that just be you and Mariah, or is that something you'd want to bring in other people to have that conversation with?
I think it would be interesting because I've asked a lot of people about like toxic stuff that's happened at their games.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to bring in other people that have somewhat similar experience and to kind of just like
juxtapose.
Yeah, like juxtaposition and come together and like empathize with each other. Because I feel like those conversations can be very healing. I think, especially when you know it's like it's not just you that's experienced that.
All right, we have another question
Good
too.
Question.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, and I really do hope you do decide to do that, as I think that'd be really interesting and a great thing to put out there. Sorry, my dog just did something.
Yeah, it's a very hot tea spill situation.
I'm gonna leave my jokes on that one alone. What? This is from Tessie Latrix. So this is kind of a hot take question, but you mentioned monster fucking, and I've often felt like women are really comfortable with it because it's very aligned with self-preservation, like our institutionalized belief that we have to placate to stay alive. What are your thoughts as a woman and a self-professed freak?
I love you. I love this question. Okay. No, yeah, I've had, especially like, I discovered the monster freakiness through no fault of my own for like playing Mass Effect, and I had to come to terms with the fact that I did in fact find Garrus Vakarian physically attractive. And I used to be like, no, it's because his personality is great. I'm like, no, you want to fuck the lizard man. And I had to come to grips with that. Funny enough, before I came to grips with the fact that I wanted to fuck women. And it's a whole mess. But
Talia is the best girl. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah. We love her. But as I like became really open about that, like with my other girlfriends, I found like, oh, it's a lot more common than I thought. And I do think psychologically it's very fascinating. I've always found it fascinating why people are into the things that they're into. So when like I kind of looked internally, I'm like, okay, why does this like tickle some part of my brain, right? And I think this is my take with it. I think there is a comfort in knowing the danger of something up front. Like when you see a monster, you're like, I know exactly what I'm getting. It's on the tin. And I'm fully aware of the dangers that are apparent in this situation. And I've chosen to go in anyway. And typically, especially in monster content that is written by women and not by men, very consensual. Oftentimes it's like, he could kill me, but he chooses not to because I'm special. But I think there's a comfort in knowing the danger up front in a way that we don't get to have in our actual lives, because it's not all men, but we can't discern which men. Like, you can't, most of the time, tell which one is going to be kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. And there is a comfort in knowing what you're getting into up front that you don't get in your day-to-day life.
Fair. Well, I'm going to give Tessa this for craziest question we've ever had in investigation check.
Love it.
I love it. I support it. Bring the crazy questions in here because this is.
I do love the take of like the institutionalized belief that we have to placate to stay alive, because very much so.
Yes, great worded question. I will give them that.
Yeah,
that is
incredible.
Started with monster fucking, and we got into just a crazy, amazing.
And
question.
It's a full circle, baby.
It's like a circle. Love is like a circle. Okay. So I do have another question. You have done a few APs, guesting on channels. What about that has been so much fun for you?
Oh my god, I think it's been so fun to like a little bit of the difference between playing on an AP versus playing at a table, because there is that element of like, oh, there's an audience. So I think it makes me a little more aware of the level of roleplay that I'm adding to this. I want to make it entertaining. I want to engage and make it fun. I love meeting so many new people all the time, and getting to work with them and work with like the characters and things like that. I think it's a great way to like start growing your own personal network, because you hop into a one shot, there's a bunch of random people, but there's something unique about this hobby that helps you build connection and relationships with people that you didn't know like 3 hours ago, and now you feel super close with them. Like the game that I played here with y'all at Goodberry Cafe, insanity for how good that story was with a bunch of fucking strangers, and I felt so intrinsically tied to every single person by the end of it.
I was gonna shout that out, the Before the Storm game. It was you guys came away from that, some of you crying,
sobbing,
which was just so amazing.
And like we mention it all the time on our podcast whenever we're talking to guests, and I'm like, no, this fucking game killed me, destroyed me.
Oh, all right. I've got nothing else for you, Alejandra. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. This has been such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give us all the rundown. Where can people find you? What are you going to be on next? What do you got going on in your life?
Incredible. Yeah, so you can find us everywhere at Table Talk RPG. You can listen to us wherever podcasts can be consumed, but especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that good stuff. We have episodes that are an hour long every single Wednesday. We are currently on hiatus, but we got like 60-something episodes for you to run through if this is your first time finding out about us. And we will start back up in January. And that's pretty much it for us until 2025.
Fantastic. I've got nothing else.
Sure.
If you've got nothing else, we're gonna say goodnight to you, geeks. I don't know what else to say, but we love you, geeks. Good night.
Love you. Thank you so much.
Bye.